Go live. There we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Geek Boutique podcast. My name's JS. This guy on your right, on my left, whatever, Mr. At Messiah Complex Cosplay.
What?
How you doing, buddy?
Me? I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. We have a special guest with us tonight.
So special.
Mr. J.M. Clark, podcaster, host of An Elegant Weapon. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Take two,
thanks.
buddy. Take two.
Yeah,
we got you this time.
Joining.
Yeah. This didn't turn into a round robin Matt Damon type thing. So we got it together, which is awesome.
Definitely. Guys, if you are new to the podcast, well, first of all, thanks for checking us out. Make sure you give us a follow, especially if you're watching us here on or not on Instagram. What am I saying? Here on YouTube. Give us a follow. Leave us a like. Guys, and the people that are watching, I know there's people watching because I can see there's people watching. Leave us some likes. That really helps grow the show here on YouTube. Subscription is always appreciated. It costs you nothing. Thanks for joining us. We've got a bunch of people already commenting here. We will start going through these comments. Mr. J, how about we start with telling us, the obligatory, who you are, what you do, what's your shtick, give us your elevator sales pitch.
Well, it began many years ago.
In the dark time,
the
before
podcast
the Empire.
thing. Okay, well, yeah. I am the host of a podcast called An Elegant Weapon. This podcast is mainly centered around independent comic book creator interviews. That's the bulk of it. But I also have done a lot of panel moderation over the years, and often those translate into episodes. So there's been a lot of also celebrity interviews and live shows and things like that. So basically, it was back in 2011. Me and my friend Sean had already been going to Fan Expo for years, and podcasting was getting popular, and we were listening to all the big ones, the Kevin Smiths, the Joe Rogans, the Adam Carollas, the Chris Hardwicks, the whole big lineup way back in like 2009, 10. I think Kevin Smith started in 07 or 08, and we were just big fans. And all I ever heard was Kevin Smith rapping in my ear about how everybody should be doing this. Anybody can be doing this. So why aren't you doing this? And my buddy and I thought, let's do this. So one night he came over to my house. We rolled up a giant spliff. We went down into my basement. We hit record on the voice memos on my iPhone, which at the time was maybe an iPhone 6 or 7. And we recorded the very first episode of An Elegant Weapon. And 10 or almost 11 years later, he unfortunately has passed on, RIP, and to Sean. But he was a wonderful friend and co-host for years. And I continued on. This was about episode 70 that I went solo. And now I'm at episode 423. So, yeah, it's been a grand adventure, traveling all over. I'm also a Canadian ops manager for SourcePoint Press, which basically means, when they come here, I help set up and through. SourcePoint Press Publishing.
Okay.
Who is an independent publisher out of the Midwest, but covers all across North America at this point. A lot of fine Canadian creators as well. So I had made friends with them years ago. So hooked up with them and the show, I've just gotten to do so much traveling and had so many grand adventures over the past decade that it's amazing. All I did was hit record, and it led to some incredible things. So it's been cool.
So why don't you get into a little of the type of stuff that your podcast covers and the type of guests that you have on, and tell us a little bit about the stories of An Elegant Weapon.
It started out very conversationally. What it was me and my buddy just talking shit online and just, talking about whatever. And at the time, Twitter had kind of just started a year or two before, and Twitter had gotten huge. And we had made this very cool little community of comic book podcasters on Twitter. And this included like Drunk on Comics, the Woo Mates, Next Element podcast, just a lot of very cool up and coming podcasts from that time. And remember, like, even though podcasting was exploding at the time, I mean, there was like 3,000 new shows a day at the time or something. It was still relatively new and relatively primitive. And it was a very simple process. It was mainly just people, you know, hitting record and talking with their friends. So that's what we did for a long time. And then as we were going to conventions, it was more me than my co-host, but I've always been fascinated with people and interested in people and always done a lot of kind of interviews and stuff. So I thought I'd start interviewing people in Artist Alley. So it really kind of grew from there. That's when the show kind of caught on, because it kind of became a show where the creators got to hear each other sharing their processes and their, you know, journeys and their ideas. So that was one thing that I was really proud that the show became, was kind of a hub for creators to get in contact with themselves. And that pretty much continued on. Then one little cool story is 2015, I am in Pennsylvania. I'm in Philadelphia. And I'm in Allentown, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. And I am at the Great Allentown Comic-Con. I was invited down there by a very good friend I'd made on Twitter, Stan Konopka, the writer of The Rejected, which is a fantastic book. He invited me to come down and hang out, so that's what I did. So I'm there. It's a very tiny little show. It's in this weird kind of flea market, like Mallrats flea market, barn type, like place. I don't even know what to call it. It was like an expo center, but not really a convention center like we'd think of it. There was like a wrestling museum upstairs and stuff. So I'm there, and Nichelle Nichols is the guest, and she's about to do her panel. And they are literally about to send her out there all by herself. She's a 70-plus-year-old woman in a wheelchair, and she can't hear jack. Like, she's completely deaf at this point. So I'm like, you can't send her out there alone. She won't even be able to hear the questions, never mind, like, know what's going on. So it was kind of a scramble, and my friend was like, screw it, you do it. And I was like, all right, I got this. So I went out there, and I did my very first celebrity panel ever, my first live panel ever, and it happened to be Nichelle Nichols, which is, to this day, I still think absolutely insane.
Pretty good one to start off with.
And, yeah, right. And I kept it very simple.
Kinda
you know,
jealous,
I just
really.
kind of,
Yeah, a little bit.
it was like a magical kind of movie moment. You know, it really was. I just was right place, right time, right circumstances. And it just came down to the moment and saying yes. That's why kids always say yes if you can. So went out there, kept it simple. Mostly I did a lot of just repeating to her the questions that the audience were asking, right? Just kind of moderating, doing what you're supposed to do. And it went wonderfully well. So after that, Michael Biehn was going to be up from Terminator and Aliens. And they were like, well, can you do him too? And I was like, well, shit, yeah, I can, right? Let's do this. And I just ended up doing all the panels for the weekend. So off of that show, they decided to hire me as the panel coordinator for the Great Philadelphia Comic-Con, which was a show that I got to work with for, it's no longer running, but I got to work with them for about 5 years. So that was like the big thing. That's the thing that came from podcasting, where I was dealing with celebrities and not just like hosting them, but organizing these panels and arranging, you know, their stays and just being staff on a Comic-Con, which just led to some crazy, crazy panels I got to do. And so obviously then the pandemic hit. Things kind of slowed down. There was no more traveling for me. I took a few sabbaticals because I was off doing a lot of hiking and things. So the show kind of dipped in and out over the pandemic. But then things cleared up, took some time, and here we are, rolling back, rolling hard, and rolling strong. And that's basically the story behind An Elegant Weapon.
Why the name? Where did the name come from, Jay? I don't know if I've ever asked you. How many years have I known you? I've even been on the show, and I don't think I have asked you.
Because it's not as clumsy or as random as a blaster. It's an elegant weapon for a more civilized age.
That totally makes sense
See?
now.
That's
a pretty.
I know, but that's a pretty great segue into what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, if you're watching us live, we are going to be talking Star Wars today. If you haven't noticed, Jay has about 20,000 lightsabers behind him. Back in Star Wars.
There's 86 altogether.
86. Oh
But
my God.
you can't see them all. But
I have 2.
What do I got? Oh, that's nothing. Dropping iPads. The name was just, I always loved the phrase ever since I was a little kid. I thought it was the coolest way to describe the coolest weapon ever. And I knew from the second I started listening to podcasts, like there was never another option. It was always going to be, if I start a podcast, it's going to be called An Elegant Weapon. No, like I didn't even like my co-host didn't have a choice. I was like, no, this is
what we're calling it.
And then my co-host, being a smart ass at the time, was like, well, we got to letter the episodes then. Every episode's got to be Roman numerals, just like Star Wars. Which I was like, oh, hey, cool, awesome idea. Until, 423 episodes later, when now certain episodes have had to be like C, C, D, X, X, I, V, Q, R. And I'm like, every episode now I've got to I've learned Roman numerals like you can't believe, right? So I kind of regret doing that, but now that I've started,
you can't stop now. So,
right.
I am curious. You've been podcasting. You said now for what, 10 years, 11 years?
Almost 11. It'll be 11 years in next. No, wait, it was 11 years in September. Sorry,
and 400 some odd episodes. I'd like to hear some of the lessons that you've learned over the years of podcasting. But what's been that one biggest lesson that's not gonna leave you ever after 10 years of doing this?
Take chances. Mm-hmm. Take the risks. Say yes. Go for it. The absolute worst thing that's ever gonna happen to you is they're gonna say no. And that's fine. So if you can get past that little ridiculous thing, but always say yes. Always take the chance. Always push for your dreams, as cheesy as that sounds. It's been a step-by-step baby process over 10 years to kind of get to a certain point, but it was only because I took those risks and I took shots. And, I've sent emails that I didn't even, I've sent emails to people to get on the show that I didn't even ever expect a response from, never mind them actually coming on the show, which they eventually did, like heroes of mine that I never considered I'd get the chance to just have a one-on-one conversation with. But I was like, you know what, screw it. So I shot out an email, and you know what? They said yes. So just as afraid as you are, just go for it, man. And whatever it is you're doing, just do it for the love of it. I think I've lasted because I love doing this. I never wanted to make money. I never have. This still costs me money. There's a lot of cool perks. You know what I mean? And it's neat that way. But the things that have come out of this have been they've been dreams come true. Things I would have never gotten to do had I not taken the shot. So that's the biggest lesson I've learned. Even if you're afraid, take the shot. Worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say no, right? And if you take that shot, you end up with Alice Cooper on your show.
Who's your white whale though, Jay? Like, who have you always wanted to have on the show and that you've never gotten a chance to book or connect with or whatever? Like, who's that one person that you're like, man, would ever like to have them on the show?
Well, I'm on to there's kind of two, but they're 2 and 3 because I actually did snag my number one guest ever that I wanted. And that was one of the big shots I took. So my 300 episode was coming up. I was like, I got to do something big, right? I'm going to go for it. Who's your hero? Who's your ultimate podcasting man hero? Why, it's Ralph Garman of Hollywood Babylon, K-Rock, one of Kevin Smith's hosts. Hollywood Babylon, to me, is the greatest piece of entertainment ever put together of any medium. It's a weekly, joy for me. And, and he's got his own show now, The Ralph Report. So he had gotten fired up. Man. Yeah. So he's just like huge fan. So I said, fuck it. And I sent him an email. And I just laid it out. I was like, hey, huge fan, blah, blah, blah. It's my 300th episode coming up. I was hoping you could spare maybe 10, 20 minutes, just hop on, help me celebrate. And I got an email back like the next day, and it said, all it said was, let's do it.
Perfect.
And I got shaky. I got like giddy and shaky and sweaty and nervous and all that kind of crap.
Did you get
and,
that reaction
I don't
when he
get
answered
nervous.
back and said, "Yeah, sure, let's do it"? Did you do the "Oh fuck, what did I do"? Did you have that?
No.
Like, oh shit, now we're
really
doing
didn't. See, well, here's the weird thing is like I don't really have much of a nervous gene. Like I'm very like I've been acting and doing stuff like in front of people since I was like 2 years old. And I'm very comfortable in front of a crowd. I'm very uncomfortable in front of people. And I think it helps me do all this stuff. But I feel as comfortable on stage as I do in front of like 1 or 2 people.
Gee,
like
what's that like?
I don't get that. It's I don't know. I mean,
no, dude. Sorry, I was being
times,
sarcastic. I'm sorry. I'm the exact same way.
I get you.
Yeah, I apologize.
I hear it. Yeah. And I was like, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah. So
it's all Jeff's
I got
fault.
really excited.
I'm telling you. You wonder why people take shots at him. This is why.
It's all my fault.
I
put myself out there. That's why, dude. Of course, I put myself out there. They take shots. I get it.
Bring it around again, right?
Yeah.
You gotta wrangle it up. I totally know. Old habit. So I get really excited, like not nervous at that moment. I just got stupid excited, and I was like jumping around the house, and I'm excited, and my kid, his mom, they're all excited for me. It's one of those moments. Then it came time to record. And I got everything set up, and I'm sitting in my studio, and it's like 10 minutes before I'm supposed to shoot him the Skype link, right? We're going to do it on Skype back then. And I got so nervous, like a nervousness I've never felt before. My legs started shaking. My hands went like clammy, and I got really thrown off. I was like, oh my God, I'm nervous as fuck. And that totally threw me. And I had to take a few minutes and just calm it out and breathe it out. And then I got on with him, and I was nervous for maybe a minute tops. And all I had to do was start talking and him talking back. And the second the conversation started, that all went away. And I was really proud of myself that it calmed out. I went right into it. And he was going to give me like 10 minutes or something. And we ended up talking for like 40 minutes and just had the best conversation. And then a little while later, he ended up coming to Forest City Comic-Con in London. You remember that, Jeff? Yeah?
You, of course.
Yeah, I think you were there.
Yep.
And he was there live. So I got to meet him and interview him yet again for the podcast. So he's been on twice. So beyond that, of course, I'd have to say Kevin Smith. 2 episodes ago, I was lucky enough to get a 420 episode shout out from him for the show. But I'd still, of course, love to sit down and have an actual interview with him.
Yeah, of course.
And Rob Paulson, who is the voice of Yakko Warner and a couple of the Turtles. I'm a big fan of his and his old podcast too, because he was a big proponent of voice acting and, getting all the names out there as well. So those 2 would be big ones for me. But yeah, after Ralph Garman, to be honest, it's kind of like I'm willing to shoot for anything now.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like Ralph Garman to me was such a get that like I'd shoot for Tom Cruise and not even bat an eye. Like that's how big that get was to me personally, right? So yeah, really these days it's I'm just open and excited, and it's cool because my 2 big goals were Ralph Garman and hitting episode 420, which I've done both now.
Yeah, perfect.
So it's time to let some new goals kind of present themselves.
Yeah, of
you know
course.
what I mean?
Just don't retire. That's all.
Never. You can't get rid of me.
The podcast of awesome facial hair to boot. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. That's nice. Our boy Noah, and he's got actually like this giant beard on him. So
I actually went back to basics because like during the pandemic, I tried the whole Zoom thing, YouTube live thing, and which is great. And I watch these shows all the time. But it just wasn't for me in the way that I had started doing this by wanting to have a conversation that was so real that I forgot we were recording. Yeah. That was always my goal. I always wanted to get so into talking to somebody about whatever it was, didn't matter. I always loved most when we forgot we were recording. And I think just being live and the video, and I don't know, there was something about it that it was starting to feel a little too, I don't know, too like lifted. It was too like structured in a way. And I kind of needed to go back to where because it felt like it got to a point, especially after 10 years, where there was moments where it felt like, okay, I feel like I have to be doing this. And I never wanted it to get there. So when that would happen, I'd just take a break, take a couple weeks off and, kind of, wait till it was feeling better again. But since I kind of went back to how it started, it's been great. I've been doing some of the best shows that I've done in years, and it's been a fantastically fun time. So I'm in a really good place with it these days. So, but yeah, kids, the only place you can find me is where you can actually download an MP3 file or stream it.
So are you on any of the podcast services? Like, are you on?
I'm on all the podcast services. You're gonna find me on Apple, Spotify, Google,
okay.
Amazon, all those ones. But you're not gonna find me on like YouTube or Twitch or doing live stuff on Facebook or Instagram anymore. I think the closest I get to that these days is TikTok, because like I'm TikTok obsessed. I just love TikTok. I think it's amazing. I think it's all the best things I ever hoped in a social media platform, like just put together. It's people making their own celebrities. It's people making their own news. It's people sharing things that we would never, ever be able to share through like a YouTube setting, like having to kind of pre-up a video sort of thing, right? So I just love TikTok. I'm all about it.
And where did Jay has all the lightsabers? Yes, he sure does. So speaking of, let's start to segue a little bit. Where did obviously you're an OG kind of fella as far as the trilogy goes, but where did the love for Star Wars start? I'm assuming it started the same way it started with JS9 when you were a kid, watching the original trilogy. Yeah. Have you progressed? Are you one of those? Are you like our buddy Crazy Mike Cosplay, who's like, I like the old stuff and fuck everything new, or are you a little bit more open minded with where Star Wars is going and where we're at now?
I'm hugely open-minded. I am a prequel apologist. I fucking love them. Excuse my language. I don't know if I should be swearing or not, but
you can swear. Yeah,
yeah.
I can't help myself, kids. So apologize for my sailor mouth tonight. But
no.
Okay, so 1982. I'm in my uncle's basement and we're watching Star Wars, the first one. I think it was like the first time ever it was on TV or something. And I was like, what the shit is this? And then my parents took me and my cousins. I was 6 years old and we went to see Return of the Jedi. And, that was it. X-Wings, lightsabers, Ewoks. I was down for all of it. I grew up, liking it, but not like obsessed with it. I kind of grew out of Star Wars as I got actually more into comic books. Star Wars sci-fi movies, Crawl, all that kind of good time. The Beastmaster. I grew up loving all that stuff. And then when I got to like 10 to 12 is when comic books really took off for me. I'd always liked them as a kid, but when I became like almost like a serious collector, I guess you'd say, it would be around those days. And, always still appreciated Star Wars, but we weren't getting a lot of Star Wars. The only Star Wars we were getting, I was reading. I was reading the books and I was reading the comics. Loved them all. Everything Dark Horse was doing, fantastic stuff. So I was keeping up, but I was keeping up with a lot of stuff, right? There just weren't as many options. When I was 9 years old, we moved to Mississauga from St. Catharines. I was born and grew up in St. Catharines till we were 9. Then moved to Mississauga, and I remember the day we moved in, I had, I can show you, actually. I have to show you. Hold on. Whoa. This guy, come on. So I had this lightsaber. I don't know if you guys remember these, but these were the...
yeah, I remember those.
The Force lightsaber.
Oh, yeah, of
which
course.
had kind of holes in them, and it was just a long plastic tube. And when you swing these around, they make like you can hear the wind going through. So I had one of these, was jumping up and down on my bed on the very first day we were moving in, and I smashed the light fixture. And my mom took this lightsaber and cracked it over her knee, just destroyed it and threw it away. Cried and I cried. And honestly, since that day, it kind of became an obsession. So when Star Wars was re-released in the 90s, it kind of brought it all back, and I started remembering all the nostalgic things I loved about Star Wars, and kind of just hopped back on board, and started buying the comics like regularly again, and really like catching up on all the novels I'd missed or skipped, and really got back into things. And because I knew that's when they announced the prequels. Then the prequels came, and I love them. I love them to death. Are you kidding? Hadn't had Star Wars in so long. And I understand it's like any Star Wars movie. You take it with the cheese, you take it with the good, you take it with the bad. But overall, it's Star Wars. And I've always been a Jedi guy. I'm not a Han guy or an Empire guy or, like a Rogue Squadron guy, like
You're
a lot
Luke
of people
guy.
may tend to be. Yeah, Empire's not my favorite Star Wars movie, whether that's blasphemy or not. I'm a Jedi guy. And, the prequels gave me the Jedi. I got to see the Jedi Temple. I got to see an army of Jedi all ignite their lightsabers at once, I got to see Padawans. I got to see all that shit. And that's what I was all about. So Phantom Menace for me is my second favorite Star Wars movie.
Oh, wow.
My first being Return of the Jedi, And I love them. I love them to death. I understand the faults that they have and they carry, but they were everything that I wanted to see and everything that I loved. So overall, I think they're great. I think they're fun movies. I think they told a good story. They got to be where they were supposed to be going, and that's the great thing about Star Wars is that you can be deprecating about it in a way that's still loving and fun, right? It's like being deprecating with your friends, like when you're knocking on your friends or making fun of your friends. It's like Star Wars is your friend. You can make fun of it because there's lots of parts of your friend that are stupid and goofy, but overall you love them because they're an awesome friend. And that's kind of how I look at Star Wars,
Well, it's always been the way too. I've always been of the opinion because Star Wars is so generational, right? Like most of the guys from our generation will tell you that it was the original trilogy, and then you've got the millennials that are all, and the between the Gen Xers and the millennials that all love the prequels, and now you're going to have a new generation of kids that are all going to be into the sequels and the TV shows and everything else.
Which is my son.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there's a Star Wars.
I have a 12-year-old boy who was all about Kylo Ren. Sorry.
Yeah. No. There's a Star Wars for everyone, and I've said this before, and I'll say this again. Star Wars doesn't belong to Lucasfilm, and it doesn't belong to Disney, and it doesn't belong to George Lucas or anybody else, or Kathleen Kennedy, or Jon Favreau, or Dave Filoni. Star Wars belongs to all of us because it's become such a cultural phenomenon across the globe for 5 decades now. Over movies, comics, books, TV shows now, like animated, you name it, it's become something that we can all relate to, we can all take part in. And yeah, you'll find people like that, right? Where people will take ownership of certain things. Well, I'm 50 and the original trilogy is where it's at, and fuck everything that came after that and everything else. And hey, man, like I've been one of those guys when the prequels came out. I'm like, what is this shit that I'm watching? Now I have since had a bit more appreciation for them, but they're still not my favorite amongst the films.
Scary part is that generation, the original trilogy generation, they're going to be dead soon. Maybe 20, 30 years. I mean the people who were adults in the 70s. I mean the people who were like the 20 to 30-year-olds in the 70s are the ones who I find are the begrudging ones. It's not the kids from the 70s. The kids are still cool. The kids who grew up with it. We were the kids, right? Like I was 6 years old when Jedi came out. I don't remember the first two. Jedi was my exposure to Star Wars. Yeah. But whenever I see people grumping on Star Wars, original trilogy is the only Star Wars, I usually find they're about, 15 to 20 years older than me. It's just a general observation that I've had.
No, that's fair. Now, as far as the current crop, so we got the sequels. And now, of course, we're into all the TV shows. Star Wars has gone the way of Star Trek, where they're clearly more focused on the television side of things than they are with the movie side of things. We haven't had anything since Rise of Skywalker. There's been talk of films that are going to be in development, are going to be coming out. Tarantino was going to do one, and Patty Jenkins was going to do one, and Colin Trevorrow was going to do one, and the guys from Game of Thrones were going to do a trilogy, and then Rian Johnson was going to do a trilogy.
God, that all went away.
That's what I'm saying. So there's been so many things, but the TV stuff has just been they've just been cranking that shit out. Now you've got Ahsoka coming up.
Money maker though. They make more money off of the subscriptions to Disney Plus.
There's
For
two
Disney
exact
Plus.
reasons for it. I can give you the two reasons that it went that way. And the number one reason is just the entertainment landscape, where people aren't going to movies as much. They're not making as much movies, and it's cheaper and easier to put it on streaming. And that's how people want to consume their entertainment now. And yes, movies can come out, and yes, movies can be big, but maybe one every year or two is like enormous enough, like it used to be, where there were times in like the 90s or the 2000s where you could name 5 movies that you wouldn't believe came out the same year.
Well, sure, because there was no other platform then, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
So, but it doesn't work like that anymore. So I think it's just they can churn more out TV wise. And number 2 is Dave Filoni, because honestly, and this isn't a knock on any of those creators that were going to be involved with making those movies. It's despite the fact that there were different directors of all the Star Wars movies, there was always an authoritative figure. There was always George. There was always George keeping it Star Wars. And when George went away, there was no real authoritative figure. Kathleen Kennedy, great. She's an awesome producer, but she isn't immersed in thinking about this shit 24/7. She may love Star Wars and maybe even be Star Wars' biggest cheerleader, but she's not going home at night laying in her bed thinking about, why did this Jedi do this that time or whatever. She's just not that person. Where George would lay awake at night and get up and have to make a note. Dave Filoni is the prodigal son. Like Lucas literally orally handed it all to him. And Filoni is, for lack of a better term, the chosen one. He's the one to take over that authoritative role. So right now, I think we're getting all this great TV because him and Favreau are wrangling everybody who's involved with it. And, that's why it's working out so smoothly, because even though you're bringing in Bryce Dallas Howard and all these amazing directors, they still got that authoritative, true executive producer over them in Filoni and Favreau. So I think once they get back to the movies, obviously, I think that's what's going to happen, is they're going to let Filoni and Favreau be the authoritative figure over a whole bunch of new directors, maybe doing a new trilogy. Problem is, this is a hard subject for me because I hate to be a hater, especially, I'm a prequel apologist, and I know they're not like well-made movies necessarily, but the sequels were so ramshackly put together and so disjointed that I think it did a lot of damage to the fans, but in a way of it just not being well crafted or it being a coherent story. Do you know what I mean? It was like these 3 separate movies that kind of barely seemed to almost have to do anything with each other. And there wasn't that authoritative figure there. When all 3 of those movies were made, it was JJ just going fucking nuts. And, JJ doesn't live, breathe Star Wars. He's got a whole other bunch of shit going on in his head too. He's thinking about this he wants to do. He's probably got like 9 projects he can't stop thinking about. Do you think Dave Filoni wants anything to do with anything but Star Wars? No. He doesn't. He just whatever to anything else that comes. He doesn't care how big it is. He lives and breathes Star Wars. It's his passion. Mm-hmm. And you need to have someone like that in charge of the whole thing. And that's why I'm also a little off topic, but I'm really excited about James Gunn. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm really excited about James Gunn, because I know James Gunn has a passion for DC Comics. And I think he's going to be that authoritative figure that keeps that throughway going through the new DC universe. Because again, it was too much studio involvement, too much producer involvement, too much just, tomfoolery going on, and everything got disjointed. And, I think it was Kevin Feige and now Filoni and Favreau who have proven to the entire industry, no, you've got to have that godhead over an IP. You can't just let a bunch of people run wild with an IP. You've got to have that one person keeping the sacred timeline. Do you know what I mean? And without that, it's going to fucking explode into a bunch of shit that doesn't make sense. And then you're going to end up with the fucking Last Jedi. Oh. Sorry. That's what I mean. Yeah, I'm very like I love all things Star Wars so much, and I think everybody can love whatever they want to love, but that movie was just wrong, and it shouldn't have been done. And they shouldn't have let him get away with it. And he may be brilliant. I know people love his other movies. I haven't seen them, but you don't do what you want with Star Wars. It's not yours. It's everybody's. You don't get to just, oh, I thought it'd be cool to try this. You don't try at Star Wars. You do or you do not. Like we've been told that for 40 years. Yoda told you that, and you didn't listen. You decided to try something. And you gave me a Luke that, I waited 30 years for my hero Luke to come back. I was reading legendary stories about him walking on lava and pulling Star Destroyers from the sky. And what do I get? I get this pussed out little hermit living in a fucking hut, scared to do anything, willing to light a lightsaber in front of his 15-year-old nephew, even though he was able to throw his lightsaber down in front of the Emperor, the most evil being the galaxy has ever seen. Yet then his 15-year-old nephew freaks him out enough that he's willing to light the thing. No, please. You don't belong anywhere near Star Wars. Sorry, and that's my little bit of a rant.
I feel like me and you just became best friends, bud.
I was just going to say, you're not going to get any arguments from us in this channel. There's no question that it's the most divisive piece of Star Wars media that's ever been produced. There's no question. It made over $1 billion at the box office. It is though. It is because it has.
I don't think
its
any
lovers.
real Star Wars. I don't think the lovers are real Star Wars fans. I think they're just people who like that movie.
That's up for debate.
Maybe have happened to see the rest of them.
I know some pretty hardcore Star Wars people that still love that film. So I'm not going to start labeling folks what they are and what they aren't, but it is definitely a divisive piece of media.
It's the most divisive piece of Star Wars media ever. And I think The Last Jedi started a downward spiral for Star Wars movies that I think is bringing on what we're seeing now. And the reason, or at least part of the reason why stuff is on TV now, because Disney is afraid to reinvest $400-500 million into a production that's going to barely break even, right? I know people will say, oh, well, The Last Jedi, they made $1.2 billion. Yeah, but when you take the movie's budget plus the marketing budget, they barely made $300 million or $200 million on that movie.
Yeah, of course, you just put Star Wars on it. We're going to go see it. Even if it's shit, we're going to go see it because it's Star Wars, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And I actually...
Solo has entered the chat.
My favorite of the three was the last one. Was what was it? Revenge of the Jedi? Rise of Skywalker. That was actually my favorite. I thought, considering what had happened with The Last Jedi, I thought that they turned it around really well. I know it was a difficult thing, and it's not the perfect movie, and there's a lot of things that I'm not thrilled about it. My least favorite thing in the history of Star Wars is in that movie, yet I liked that movie. I really had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. So yeah, it's to each their own in a way.
Yeah, it's different strokes. I'm a Force Awakens guy personally. Like, of the three, Force Awakens is easily, and Force Awakens made a ton. Like, if you remember when the Force Awakens trailers came out and the hype that was coming around the Force Awakens, and the Force Awakens comes out and it makes nearly $3 billion or $2.5 billion. But like, everybody was going to see that movie. Everybody was talking about that movie. Everybody at that time loved it and was hyped for a new Star Wars trilogy. And then The Last Jedi came out. So I'm not debating the fact that it's not. I think it's a fucking travesty, The Last Jedi. But it was more than that. Putting out a divisive movie at that time was the worst thing you could do, because all the hype that was surrounded from The Force Awakens just fucking plummeted and died.
Killed.
Yeah.
And then when it's time for Rise of Skywalker, everybody's like, well, what are we going to get? Are we going to get The Force Awakens, or are we going to get The Last Jedi? And it turns out we kind of got an amalgamation of both. In reality, because like you said, there were things in that movie that were dreadful, and there were things that were outstanding. So it was kind of one of those, like, well, shit, like, now I got to kind of pick and choose what I... That's why when anybody asks me, I'm like, Force Awakens here, Last Jedi somewhere in the basement, and then like Rise of Skywalker's kind of in the middle for me. There was enough fan service in there. I was like, oh, Lando's back, cool, and this, and like, all that's great. But then there was these other elements. I was like, ugh, God, let's drag poor old Palpatine's broken bones out here one last fucking time to try to make this a thing. Ugh.
Yeah, you know what?
Oh, and she's his granddaughter. Oh, that makes sense. Let's do that, you dumb shit.
I was already used to the idea of Palpatine coming back because of the books, right? Like, he came back right away in the books, the whole clone saga back then. And the thing for me was, as much as the Force is ridiculous and it's magical, it's always been grounded in a certain list of unspoken rules. You know, as all powerful as the Force is, you can still kind of only go so far. And then in this movie, they went ahead and Force teleported a lightsaber. I cannot jive with that.
They also
I
do
can
some
jive
force...
with Luke.
By the way, the force healing too was like a big thing as well at the time, because everybody's like,
Force healing's another thing I'm used to. It's been around for years.
in
It
the
was
legacy stuff, but nothing in the canon stuff.
Yeah, nothing in the canon at all. No, well, a little bit in Clone Wars in the
was there some in Clone Wars? Okay,
a little bit, but
there
not
was
to
a
that
little
extent.
bit in that one episode where they're on the Force planet.
Ilum, yeah.
Yes, where they meet the father and the son and the daughter. The light and the dark.
Yes.
The Clone Wars nerds coming out of the woodwork now. Shit,
so cool. I love that shit too. And that's all
check
Filoni,
myself out of
right?
this conversation. You boys go ahead.
But it's like it's like there's certain things, I don't know. It's like it doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? There's some things that they decided to do that just didn't feel right, that I feel like somebody who's lived and breathed Star Wars for 30 years just wouldn't have done. Like, I'm actually far more down with Luke, even though I think he should have came. I'm more comfortable with a Force fight from far away in your mind, like a Force, illusion, than I am actually literally teleporting a solid object through the Force. That's like teleporter technology. That's Star Trek shit. It doesn't belong in my Star Wars. And that kind of irks me a little bit, but you have to be forgiving, because now we've got these movies or these TV shows that are literally like in front of our faces, like with absolutely zero shame, fixing everything. For like Filoni, he might as well put out a tweet saying, "I'm fixing everything," like, because that's literally what he's doing.
Well, he's apparently developing a new movie,
and it's making me feel better. Like some of these shows, because it's very difficult to interweave canon that's already there. Like, even if you take all the legacy and legend shit out of it, you've still got a lot of things that are cemented that are hard to deal with. Like, how do we make Vader and Kenobi fight again? Even though, in the movie they say this, this, and this. Well, we better make not, how much trouble they had to go through to make sure that young Luke didn't lay eyes on a lightsaber. Right? Like, if you think about it, like, that was, they couldn't just have him running away in Kenobi when he's running away from the third sister there. Mm-hmm. He can't see her lightsaber because he specifically says in A New Hope, he doesn't know what a lightsaber is. He's never seen one before. So, I wonder if they caught that in the script, or did they catch that in shooting? Because that's the kind of thing.
Filoni's a master of that.
Exactly.
You got to remember,
so
Filoni.
That's why you need that authoritative figure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Filoni crafted a whole story between two movies, right?
It's masterful.
Literally crafted a whole story between two movies that actually ends in the middle of the second movie, right? Or the third movie, technically.
And it's filling so many voids. Like, even Andor, which I didn't love, I thought was okay, but I absolutely understand why everybody loved it. Like, it was super well made. I can appreciate that, absolutely. Like, I get the hype. I may not emotionally, personally feel the hype, but I totally get it and I totally respect it. But where there were moments where, like in the guy's antique shop, when there's a Jedi Temple Guard helmet in his shop, right? Like if you look close, there's shit like that. There's that as well, but there's also a Jedi Guard.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that.
Like, yeah. And I just love that, man. It's super cool, because even though that whole show didn't, grab me like it's grabbed most, there were still cool moments in there for me.
There's a lot of Easter eggs in his shop.
That's all Filoni.
There's a lot of Easter eggs in his shop. There's a Sith and Jedi holocron sitting on a shelf.
And they're big too. I didn't expect them to look as big as they look.
What was the other thing too? There's a Mandalorian armor. There's a Beskar armor in there. Mm-hmm. There was There was another thing too that I was like, oh, that's.
I can't remember right
Whatever it
now, but
is.
there was a bunch.
But I geeked out a lot when I saw the antique store. I just found that Andor was a good show. I actually enjoyed the show for what it was. It just wasn't very Star Wars to me. You can't just slap stormtroopers and call somebody Mon Mothma and say, it's Star Wars. It really feels Star Wars to me, right? That was my real issue with that show. It was a little slow.
Especially the first bit.
It's a little long.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy spent 4 episodes in fucking jail. Like, I mean, come on, man. You couldn't have done that in like one episode.
I can respect it, though, because there is an audience for that slow thriller spy.
Don't get me wrong. There is.
And if they want their Star Wars that way, I am super down with it. Because you know what? That show didn't mess with anything. I can watch that show, enjoy it or not enjoy it, but there's nothing for me to get pissed off about because nobody decided to try what they wanted with the story or with the characters. Yeah, someone was like, you know what? I'm going to try doing a thriller version of Star Wars. This is my spy show. I want to do it serious, super dramatic, new shots, new everything. But I'm not going to fuck with the Star Wars of it, at least the story. I'm not going to take some characters and make them do things they should have never done. I can appreciate that. You know what I mean?
Well,
very much. So,
they're locked into canon, though, right? Like, this is another one of those examples, and one of my main problems with the latest batch of Star Wars shows is that we're just picking and choosing points within the 9 films, that time frames that we haven't seen on screen. So we got to fill this time gap. So we've got a time gap between before Rogue One, but after Episode 3. So we better fill that time gap with something. So we're going to show Andor and Luthien and Mon Mothma putting together. So you're hold on. Let me make my point. Hold on. Let me make my point. So you are a bit locked into canon. You already know how this ends because you've seen Rogue One. You know exactly where this goes. You know what happens to every character you're going to meet. You already know what happens. With the sequels, they don't have any of those nets. They don't have any of those safeties. They have nothing. They have to craft something brand new from scratch using existing people and products and things and places, but you've got to tell a new story because you're not locked into canon. You don't know where it's going to end. It doesn't go somewhere where the audience already knows and you're just holding their hand on the journey, like Solo, like all those, like Rogue One. You knew what was going to happen at the end of Rogue One. Leia turns, the ship goes by. You already know that's going to happen. So you're safe because there's only so much you can fuck around and do because you can't fuck with the canon. The sequels, they can do whatever they want. And it turned out they want to take a big old shit on Star Wars and on Luke Skywalker in that second movie. But I feel like there was too much freedom at that point, kind of like what you're trying to say, like, because they were literally just, we're going to try whatever we're going to try, and that's what's going to happen. But they didn't have that safety net of, well, this is a story in between 2 other stories that we've already told, so we're kind of locked into what we can do.
Yeah. Well, this is my general idea of where it's going, because I don't think people realize that we are in a MCU phase 1 situation right now, where this is absolutely all building to something. And a lot of people are thinking, okay, they're making cool stories and they're filling in these gaps because they think they will want these characters back. But no, this is a large puzzle that's slowly coming together and is going to culminate in Ezra Bridger being the new face of the Star Wars universe.
I agree.
And
Ezra Bridger is going to be the new face, and Thrawn's going to be the new heel.
Absolutely.
That's where they're going. I've been saying that for weeks.
Face and heel. It's you guys dropping wrestling terms over here. You guys are so adorable.
Yeah.
That's where it's going. So we're going to get new movies where Ahsoka Tano is going to be your Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ezra Bridger is going to be your... Well, actually, no. Ahsoka will probably be dead. Because I think at some point there'll have to be a time jump. Because what's going to happen now is they've already, with Ahsoka, Ezra Bridger is coming back. Thrawn's going to come back, and they're going to set all this up. I think it's also going to spin out with, I'm sure the Mandalorian Wars, that whole thing is going to have something to do with it all. But they're going to have to get to a point where basically I think Rey and...
That's a different time frame.
It's like 30 years
War
after.
Happens before the original trilogy.
I think it's just going to get tied in somehow. They're not going to let like there may be new Mandalorians or something, but they're not going to let the Darksaber die. basically, when it comes to the future. But I think we'll get an older Ezra Bridger because he'll come back in Ahsoka, which is what is it, 5-10 years after Jedi or whatever, right? And eventually they'll get back to the movies, and the movies will probably center around a grown-up, whatever, 40, 50-year-old Ezra Bridger. Maybe he gets a Padawan. I don't know. I don't want to make those like super detailed calls. But right now it seems pretty damn obvious that they're building to, because Ahsoka Tano is the face of Star Wars right now. That she's the Luke, and that's who everybody loves. And
Erica says when Ahsoka dies, we riot.
I can't see them killing Ahsoka. I'm not
right?
going to lie to you. I mean, they're giving her own show. I'd be pretty, and it's Rosario Dawson.
But we know, unfortunately, due to Rise of Skywalker, we know Ahsoka's dead because her voice appears to Rey at the end. She hears Ahsoka's voice amongst all the other dead Jedi. So unfortunately, by that time, we do know that Ahsoka is dead.
By the sequels time, yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay. Sure.
Yeah, by the sequels time. But Ezra could easily be like, what's he going to be? Like, he's a young kid, right? Is he maybe 15 or something in the Rebels?
He might be
cartoon?
even younger than that.
Well, they're going to have to spend some time building this kid up, though, right? Because for all of us nerds that didn't watch Rebels, which I haven't.
Exactly, yeah.
They're going to have to introduce him soon if they want to start building him as the future face of, if that's the ultimate plan, right? Like Thrawn, at least they've referenced, right? At least Ahsoka on Mandalorian is like, where is it Grand Admiral Thrawn? And a lot of people went, who? Because I know Rebels didn't have like as big of a viewership as Clone Wars and as the rest of the Star Wars media. So if they're going to bring Ezra in, they're going to make him the face of. They better do it quick because we're 4 shows in and we still haven't seen this cat. He hasn't even been referenced. So.
Oh, they're gonna have to figure something out with Rey too.
I know he's been cast in Ahsoka.
Oh,
that's cool. But I mean, the show's called Ahsoka, so I mean, is that just going to be like we're going to kind of spoon feed you this kid for a bit, just to kind of get you familiar with, and then we'll break him off and make him sort of the lead? Or
I think so,
probably.
Yeah.
All right.
Ed's asking, isn't Ezra the same age as Luke and Leia? Yeah, I think he's very close in age because I think Ezra was not Ezra, his master.
Kanan. So Kanan Jarrus,
So Kanan was a kid during Order 66.
Yes, and then grew up. So I think it's like 5-10 years that Rebels takes place after episode 3, right?
Well, Rebels is early in it's before Andor. And
so I think, because how old's the guy that they cast now? I think he seemed like a 20-ish year old. He seems like a young 20s, actor, but he doesn't seem like a little kid. So, around that age, throw 30 years on the kid, he could be 50, 60 years old, which is the age that Luke was in the sequels, right? No, so Ezra could pretty much last.
Yeah, when we see Ezra, he's going to be Luke's age. Yeah. So he's going to be in like his 30s.
And wouldn't it be cool if Rey found a teacher in Ezra? Mm-hmm. Because I don't see how they go on and ignore Rey. You can't have Rey running around the galaxy and just, we forgot about her. Here's some new Jedi for some new sequels.
Well,
I don't see how they can do that.
They're going to have to cut Daisy really a pretty big fucking check to get her back into that. Into that franchise.
They have to at least address it, even if they pay her enough just to cameo back and figure something out. But I think but here's the thing too. A lot of people are more willing to come back under Filoni. Now, these days, things are a lot more set. You know what I mean? Maybe even 2-3 years ago or a little more. I don't know if they could have got Obi-Wan made. I don't know if Ewan would have been okay with coming back to it. But thankfully, after The Mandalorian, I think they could get anybody they want at this point, right? Like after the success of all these shows, I mean, what do we got? Pablo Hidalgo stayed well. Ezra was born on Empire Day when Palpatine formed the Galactic Empire. Makes sense. Yeah. So... There you go.
They're about the same age.
Yeah, they're about the same age then. So it could easily be around. But I just don't see how you move on and ignore Rey. Like I just don't see how it's done, right?
Well, I mean, at this point in the like the Filoniverse timeline, Rey hasn't been born yet.
Right, because we're 5 years post Jedi-ish?
Yeah, like 7 years post Jedi right now. I think
somewhere around there.
Yeah, I hope they move on at some point. I don't want to spend the next 20 years now filling in the gap between, all the shows and Rise of Skywalker.
Unfortunately, Jay, I think that's what we're going to be getting for the next long while.
killing me. It's killing
well,
me.
that's why Andor is killing me, because the same thing. It's filling a gap between two stories that we already know. So I don't really have much invested in Andor. That's to see how the rebellion comes together and everything else. Like, I get it. I know what's going to happen, but at least with the Mandalorian time, the problem, Jay, is that their key character right now is still the Mandalorian, and his timeline is 5 years, 6 years, 7 years post Jedi. And so whatever they're going to do, they're going to keep focusing on Din Djarin because he's their money right now. Like,
oh yeah,
as much as everybody wants to prop up Andor and be like, oh, this is the show and adult and blah blah blah, it's mature and yada yada, it's still the Mandalorian. None of this happens without the Mandalorian being a massive hit that it was and still is, for sure. Right? 100%. So he is going to be the focus moving forward continually. And same with Pedro Pascal. He's becoming a giant fucking star. And now it's been revealed that for season 3, he's almost never in this suit. He's almost doing exclusively voiceover because he was off shooting The Last of Us for HBO. So he doesn't even have to be there to be the Mandalorian. They can keep utilizing him and just cutting him a check, just bring him into a studio for a couple of days to record all his lines. Dude, this thing is just going to print money. Like, so he's going to be the focus. There's no question in my mind. They're not just going to cast him off to jump 30 years forward in the timeline just to get into the sequel age. But I don't know, man.
And we can't forget about, like, we've got another 800 years of Grogu. Right, like, it's not like Grogu's going anywhere.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, like Grogu's going to be barely any older by the time of the sequels.
JS is going to give you his theory. Hold on.
So, for one, my first thing is that when we're talking about the Mandalorian, I don't think refers to Din Djarin at all. The Mandalorian actually refers to Grogu, because we've seen that Grogu has left the Jedi Temple to go rejoin with Mando, right? So he's not actually going to become a Jedi.
Right.
So it's going to be very, very hard to keep telling Grogu stories, who I think really, let's be honest, Grogu's the face of Star Wars right now, right? For the last 4 or 5 years, Grogu's been the face of Star Wars. It's going to be hard to keep doing Grogu stories without keeping Mando around. So we're going to see them, I think. They're going to get 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons of The Mandalorian. They're going to push it right into, I think, the sequels. They're going to keep milking that cow. Yeah. They can't not.
Well, yeah, Grogu, you can tell a million Grogu stories. They may not be Jedi stories, but, you know, he can be wandering the galaxy as his own bounty hunter self for decades, right? But you can't ignore the fact that he's going to be as strong in the Force that he is. Like, that's what his species is, just that way, right? And
well, he had been trained. That's the one thing. They had realized he had some training. He wasn't just naturally gifted, but he still had to have some training to do even the limited things that he's done. But now he's kind of cast that off because he wants to hang out with Daddy Mando, and I mean, who can blame him? Just blasting around the galaxy in that cool ass new ship of his, and you know,
I love
doing whatever it is you're going to do now. I love the new ship too, but clearly
that's been modified.
Clearly, his bounty hunting days are over because he's got nowhere to put bounties now.
He's going to get a new ship. Don't worry about that. He's going to get a new cargo.
That's when I knew that everything was going to be okay, was because of the Razor Crest. The second I saw the Razor Crest and was like, that's a clone transport ship, I was like, the first thing I'm seeing is a prequel ship. I knew it was going to be okay. Because that was the first thing I saw. Everybody was like, oh, it looks so old Star Wars. It looks so proper Star Wars. It's Mandalorian, blah, blah, blah. And then I see a fucking clone transport ship. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, I don't know if people even realize how many prequel Easter eggs are in those first couple of episodes. It's chock full of them, which was so cool. And so, you know, that's kind of when I felt a sigh of relief. Like, they're going to bridge things nicely here, I think. I think it's all going to come together. But, you know, who knows what happens.
Well, I mean, when you look
at... We're kind of all beyond the pale now, right? Like, who the hell knows?
Well,
when you actually
I have a giant...
coming out, it's a little bit all over the place. So let's go through the list quickly, okay? So Bad Batch Season 2 is actually out now. Episode 1 and 2.
First episode's great. Sorry. First 2 are great. I watched the first 2 episodes.
I haven't watched them yet. But that's out now. That's Clone Wars era. That's post Order 66.
Yes.
Mando Season 3 is coming out in March. That's Mando era.
Yeah.
Young Jedi Adventures, which is a new animated show coming out that Filoni and Favreau are not involved in. That's prequel
No,
era.
it's
There's a new seasons of Visions that is coming out, and Visions, as you know, is
so good.
all sorts
So
of
good.
just random stuff.
Yeah.
Then we've got Ahsoka that's also coming out this year. There's no date yet. Mando era. Skeleton Crew, from my understanding, is going to be original trilogy era.
Yeah.
No date yet. And then there's Acolytes, which was supposed to be High Republic, but it looks like that might be pushed back to 2024 now. Not Old Republic, sorry. High Republic. High Republic.
That's right.
I'm so excited for the Acolyte. Like, as much as I'm thrilled for Ahsoka coming, I'll be patient, because it's gonna give me everything I want. It's gonna be a Jedi TV show, bro. Yeah. Finally. Oh God.
The point I'm trying to make is it's timeline wise, it looks like they're still gonna be all over the place. Right?
Oh yeah, they're gonna shoot all over the place. Yeah,
and I'm kind of okay with that. I don't mind Star Wars being all over the place, because what that means is
not at all.
If there's something that I don't like over here, there'll be other stuff that I'll surely like. And there's so much Star Wars coming out over the next year. There's gonna be something Star Wars for everybody. Let's be honest, right?
I have a theory. This was a dream that was actually originally a fan fiction of mine, just from daydreaming. But it seems that the world may be catching up to my daydream. Because as we've heard Mace Windu, Sam Jackson say himself, there's no reason really that Mace Windu has to be dead for any reason. Mm-hmm. All we did was see him fly out of a window, right? Yep. So what if Mace Windu survives? What if Mace Windu takes with him a Padawan as a contingency? He takes this Padawan into exile with him and teaches that Padawan the ways of the Jedi to continue the Jedi Order. Because he never trusted in the Chosen One. He never trusted in the prophecy. Mace Windu was the kind of straight-laced, hard-assed motherfucker who would have a contingency plan for this kind of situation, whether it's a secret Padawan or special Padawan or something. So I have always been like, that's how you continue Star Wars. You show an old Mace Windu 30 years after he fell out that window, having survived but old, and having raised another Padawan who has become a Jedi, who's maybe even taken Padawan to himself, and they are continuing the Order. So as Yoda was in exile training Luke, Mace is off somewhere training someone else. And those are the people that you base the new sequels on. So there's easy ways to get through and around this, but Mace Windu and Sam Jackson have, talked about this enough times, and they're doing crazy enough stuff now that if you can bring Darth Maul back as many times as you have, you can bring Mace Windu back. And Sam Jackson would be down for it. So I think there's a very, 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 very good chance that some project coming forth will involve Mace Windu. It's too obvious of a bridge. It's too much of a talked about subject to not be all over. So that's kind of my big theory. I don't see Mace Windu being ignored forever. I don't see him not coming back at some point.
Are you guys aware of who Star Wars Theory is?
Yes.
The YouTuber?
I think so.
Yes.
Star Wars Theory, big, massive YouTube channel. Actually, he's got a number of different YouTube channels now. He out of pocket spent $400,000 to make a fan movie called Vader.
Oh yeah,
Episode
I did see Vader.
1.
Yep.
You've seen it.
Yep.
Episode 2, which they've already got a trailer out, if you will, and some cinematic out, would be Mace Windu. So the clones have found Vader, have found Mace. In Vader's search for any remaining Jedi, they found Mace Windu, and he goes and faces against Mace Windu. Go check it out. It's pretty neat. If you haven't seen Vader, guys, Star Wars Theory, go check it out. It's amazing. Vader Episode 1. And look up the Episode 2 information. It's pretty neat. Like, they've got some CG cinematics already, and like it's It's going to be neat.
Because they're also being smart. Like that guy who on his own on the internet who fixed the de-aging for Luke in Mandalorian. They immediately hired that fucking guy.
Yeah, he now works for Disney. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you saw the Vader versus Obi-Wan A New Hope fight redone, did you see the new version?
Mm-hmm.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Are you kidding? It's amazing that the best lightsaber fight ever is not in a Star Wars movie. It's that thing there. Whatever. What was it called
I'd
again?
argue that Duel of the Fates was a pretty good lightsaber.
That's my favorite of all time, and the reason that that's my favorite of all time because it's the new sped up version and techniques, but it's also not to the point yet where they fell in love with making sparks and flashes come off lightsabers. And that was the problem in episode 2 and 3. Was too much sparky, too much close-up, blurry, fighty shots. Whereas Phantom Menace was all open ballet. It was wide shots of these great figures doing these great, wide, open, swinging movements. And that makes it my favorite for sure. But there's been amazing stuff done.
No question. No question.
Yeah.
Well.
But yeah.
We've been on for over an hour. Before we do log off, we have to come back to An Elegant Weapon. With all of the elegant weapons behind you, I'm going to put you on the spot now, Jay. Which one's your favorite?
Okay. Do you want my There's favorites for different reasons.
Okay.
So I guess I'd have to say, I have to show you this one. Let me show you this one. It's very special. Here to get it.
Oh my God, he's climbing up on his friggin' wall.
Okay. So this is my favorite, probably for nostalgia reasons. It's also my most expensive piece in my entire collection. It's worth enough money that I probably should have it encased, but I don't yet. This is a 1985 Droids cartoon lightsaber.
I've never seen that.
From Kenner. It's mint, still in box. Maybe not mint, but it's got the old Kmart sticker there. You'll notice it's still, it's not punched, right? So it's even rarer because it's green and it's not the purple one that you usually got on the box, right? So this is very, 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 very special to me. But then there's other reasons, like the one I showed you earlier is very sentimental just because it's the one I had as a kid. And then my favorite one to look at is my Master Replicas Obi-Wan weapon lightsaber, because every little detail on it is movie accurate. So I can look at that thing and see every little scratch and dent, And then there's like, say, the first Obi-Wan I bought when they came out for Phantom Menace, when they started selling lightsabers again. That one's super special to me just because it was like the beginning, right? So those are my favorites. But yeah, it's been a long love affair with these laser swords. I just love them. So
I don't know that there's one that tops Vader's lightsaber for me. There's something about it.
Good saber. It's simple. It's straightforward. It's it's just what it needs to do.
How is this not the perfect lightsaber?
Yeah. I like the fact that it's basically he didn't change his lightsaber other than the black top. Like it's pretty much his original graphics.
Very much.
And then he
Yeah. Well, it's
so
funny
he
because
stuck with what worked for him, right?
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, let me buy another flash handle and make another. I know that's not the case in story, but it's just funny that it's basically the same lightsaber, but with the black bits,
with the black head.
Yeah,
but it's Actually, we were speaking about him earlier. This is Ezra's right here.
There you go. That's Ezra's lightsaber.
Last year. It's got the blaster, and this one shoots little darts. So when I have little darts, and I can actually shoot them out. Lots of fun.
And that was the first time we saw that in Star Wars as well, like a dual-purpose lightsaber that was not only a lightsaber, it was also a blaster. We hadn't done that before.
I got to Roger Christian is the original set director, basically, for the original Star Wars. He was the first man hired by George Lucas to work on Star Wars. He won an Academy Award for set design and such for the original Star Wars. He also did Alien and a few other flicks. So this guy's a big deal, right? He built the first lightsaber. He built the first R2. Imagine being the first guy like hired on Star Wars. So anyways, he lives in Toronto.
Oh, really?
And I got to have dinner with him just before the pandemic. And he told me the entire story of how he made the first ever lightsaber in existence. And it was amazing. Yeah, George basically said, I need a laser sword. And he went down to his friend's junk shop and just started looking around for shit. And he's like, you got anything interesting? And his buddy, this was in England, right? And his buddy was like, I got a few boxes under the table over there. Go take a look. And he pulls out a box, and it's a whole box full of Graflex handles. For anybody out there who may not know, the original lightsaber, like Luke's lightsaber, is a Graflex camera flash like handle. Like, remember when you had the old cameras and you had to hold up a flash and it go, psh? It was one of those. And he had a whole box of them. So he took this box home and just started gluing and sticking and, you know, putting stuff together. And he said he made a couple of them. And he took them to George, and George picked that one. And but it's just amazing to sit there and hear him tell me the story of, you know, going to his friends and looking around and sticking all the little doodads on and this and that. And I was like, this is unbelievable. So, and that happened because I hit record, kids. One day I decided to hit record, and 10 years later, I'm having dinner with the man who built the first lightsaber. So, show you, you know, like I said earlier, take a shot, shoot for the stars, and crazy shit can happen. And congratulations on you guys, to you guys for doing the same.
Oh, well,
like jumping into this and going full bore, and you guys are obviously passionate about this and having a great time. And that's the most important thing. If I can impart anything to you guys, just keep having fun. It's the only reason to be doing this. It's the only reason anybody should be doing this. I've watched podcasts go from the most interesting conversations I've ever heard in my life to people just wanting to make money. And it just makes me sad. And, you know, that's not what this art form originally was for. It was for conversation. And, you know, I really appreciate that you guys come at it from that angle. You know what I mean? So good on you, fellas.
Hey, we appreciate you and you coming on to the show.
Loved it. Anytime. Please have me back. I love attention so much.
Why don't you pitch your socials and where they can find you, et cetera, et cetera?
It's basically an elegant weapon everywhere with little variations. So on you can find there's an elegant weapon page. You know what? Just go to anelegantweapon.ca.
There you go.
You go to www.anelegantweapon.ca. That's my main site there, where it's got links to all my socials. We're on Instagram. Again, we're having a lot of fun. Please, if you're going to check out anything, please check out the TikToks, just because I'm having fun, like a lot of fun doing TikTok. And I just want to see what people think and get on the groove, because it's really cool that it's kind of very back and forth TikTok. But, you know, an elegant weapon wherever, all around. You can subscribe anywhere and you'll find me.
I'm gonna go and follow you on TikTok right now.
And very soon, you guys will have to stay tuned, as we will definitely have to get you two gentlemen to come on my show next and have a big old swap pod. So please know that the invitation is open, because I like to talk.
Sweet.
You guys are fine people to talk to.
Anytime.
Of course, absolutely. I've already been on. I'm happy to come back and drag JS with me, 100%.
I mean, yeah, Jeff's the real.
Yeah, you've been on a couple times, you know?
Now. Yeah.
I think you're doing all right, man.
I'm old hat. Well, you know, we're trying.
I'm just here for the pretty face.
Oh shit!
How do you guys know each other? Where did you guys have you guys always known each other, or?
No, we've known each other now for
a few years anyway.
like 6 or 7 years now, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I met at a
Okay,
little
cool.
little
Did you meet
tiny
through
con.
cosplay?
Yeah, a
Yeah.
little tiny
Alright.
con in Oshawa. Actually, I was there with my partner Teresa, and we were doing like a photo booth setup kind of thing. So we were working the con, and JS showed up with a friend of his, the guy that runs Cosplay Alliance, and we met then. We talked briefly, and everything was cool. And they were like, we exchanged like socials, and like, yeah, cool cosplay. And then JS had an idea to do like a geek and nerd based cosplay, geek and nerd based podcast show during the pandemic. And he reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey man, I need a co-host. Are you down?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." And
Love it.
that was a year and a half ago, maybe somewhere around there.
A year. Yeah, going on a year and a half. Actually,
Yeah,
going on 2
a year and a
years.
half. Going on 2 years.
I love the combo vibe between you guys because it's as if Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Bert Kreischer started a podcast together. Vibe I get going on here. And I love it. I think it's great.
That's not bad, actually. That's not. Don't look up who Bert Kreischer is. Don't do it. You're not going to be happy.
Oh yeah, I know.
You don't know the
gosh,
machine.
Yeah.
I know who he is.
Man.
The machine.
Yeah.
I literally just saw him. I saw he came to London like 2 months ago. I just saw his show. It was great.
Oh, that must have been great.
No, it was fantastic. And he ended with the machine story. No, it was fantastic.
Oh,
he has his own podcast too, doesn't he?
Oh, the Bertcast, yeah.
Oh,
The Bertcast, there you go.
He's also got the one I love with Segura.
Two Bears, One Cave. It's my absolute favorite thing to listen
to.
It's fucking great. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I love that those guys all do it the same way. They're podcasting for the same reasons that everybody should be. Is they're just having a blast hanging out with their friends.
Just having fun with it for sure.
And it's funny you say that because that's really what it's been for us. It's just been an opportunity to just hang out and chat and meet people, and through it, like we've been able to meet people, right? Like we met Robert Ricardo last year. We met Dane and Dakota, the guys from Prey. We, it's been
Matt Taylor.
He was on the show.
Yeah,
Ben
Matt Taylor was on the show. Ben Eady. Yeah, all
twice.
kinds of cool shit.
So it's been really fun that way for sure.
It's been a ride. Only way to go up from here, boys.
Which, by the way, talking about the show, next week, guys, we've got Jane Hustle, Living the Dream, coming back, along with Chris. Chris is the head of, God, I forget what the name of the company is now. They're the guys that run GameCon. And GameCon is happening in Calgary this summer. So they're going to be on the show next week. We're going to be all about GameCon, what it's all going to be about. They're going to do their hour sales pitch. Living the Dream is going to have a lot to tell us because they're going to be running a cosplay competition. They've got some very, very, very big cosplayers, like international cosplayers that are going to be judges. Like there's a lot of stuff going on. We're going to get some exclusive information out, actually. We will be spilling the beans on some GameCon stuff next week. So, guys, you'll want to make sure that you check us out next week. It'll be a good show. Like I said at the top of the show, if you're not already following us, make sure you click that follow button below. Give us a like. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, hey, give us a like there as well. I'm sure you've got a way to like or follow or whatnot. If you actually want to follow us, you can go on geekboutique.podbean.com. That's our official podcast site.
Oh, are you guys on the Podbean too?
We're on Podbean as well. Yeah.
Coming up in March, I will be making my official 11th year renewal with Podbean.
Wow, 11 years on Podbean. I've
now been with 11 years on Podbean. So if you're watching Podbean, I better get some kind of badge or sticker.
It's a great platform. I mean, for the money and the
I
features
love it. Always
and the
have.
fact that it pushes out automatically. Like you don't have to do anything. Like it's fantastic. I love it.
And it's grown over the years. Like when I started, it was very, very basic. You couldn't do any of that crap. Your only choice was Apple. Like for many years, you were on Podbean and you were on Apple, and that's all you had. Yeah. And now when you go, there's like 12 different things. You could be like, sign me up.
Yeah. Now you can be on all of them now through Podbean, right? So that's what gave us access to Spotify. If it wasn't for Podbean, we wouldn't be able to be on Spotify, right? So
exactly.
That's what really gave us the access. So, guys, if you're watching us, thank you very much. I think that's going to be it for today. Actually, that's not true. Jeff, anything else you want to...
No. We're just gearing up for March. So March Toronto Comic Con.
Yeah, let's not spill any beans just
well,
yet.
but we've talked about what we're doing on Friday, right?
We did.
We've already talked about that.
So maybe for people that don't know, Friday of Comic-Con, we are doing a Star Trek Day. It will be whatever. I mean,
bring your
phasers,
man.
Strange New Worlds, if you want to be next gen.
You want to be from the movies, Monster Maroon. We don't care.
Doesn't matter.
Star Trek. Bring your Star Trek out on Saturday. We're going to have our friend Richard there in his cosplay as a centerpiece. Yeah. So we're going to have some next gen people. We're going to have some Strange New Worlds people. We're going to have some movie people. You name it. If you've got Trek gear and you want to come out on Friday. That's what we're doing. And then we'll let you guys know what Saturday.
You'll want to make sure you come out on Friday. And if you want to know what's behind the badge. I'll leave it at that. And that will be it for this week, guys. Make sure you stay geeky. We'll see you next week.
Peace.